us defending Europe if they're attacked, but them denying us basing rights when we need them, that's not a very good arrangement. That's a hard one to stay engaged in and say this is good for the United States. So all of them's going to have to be re-examined. All of it's going to have to be re-examined.
I've recently spent some time in Europe, and basically what they say is that it's the US which is sending confusing messages to us. It's the US which is planning to disengage from Europe. It's the US which doesn't seem to be really willing to team up with NATO when it comes to moving forward in Europe. And this explains the reason why we have been very cautious dealing with the Americans when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz in particular.
Well, if that's what someone in Europe told you, that person's very disingenuous, because the United States has tens of thousands of troops stationed throughout that region, billions of dollars of weaponry staged throughout Europe. All of it there to defend Europe, not to defend America, to defend Europe from attack, okay, all over. The United States is, without the United States, there is no NATO. I mean, everyone recognizes that, including NATO. If we decided tomorrow that we were going to remove our troops from Europe, that would be the end of NATO. So they know that. And that commitment, we haven't moved troops out of NATO. So anyone who said that's not being honest or is not, I think they're playing games. At the end of the day, it's very simple. NATO is an alliance, and an alliance means it has to be mutually beneficial. It cannot be a one-way street. Let's hope we can fix it. We'll have time to address it after. Right now, we're focused on this operation.
Let's move on to something else. I would like to talk to you about Venezuela after the capture of President Nicolas Maduro. Could you tell us more about your plans for Venezuela in the future?
I think it's moving along very well. We said it from the very first day after that operation happened. I said our hope is, number one, to stabilize the country. We didn't want to see civil war. We didn't want to see systemic collapse. We didn't want to see a mass migration event. You've seen none of these things. What you've seen is that for the first time in decades, Venezuela is now selling their oil in the global market at full market price, and the money is coming back to Venezuela and being spent for the benefit of the Venezuelan people. It's being spent to buy medical goods and equipment. It's being spent to cover the salaries of teachers and police officers and civil servants and people that, sanitation workers and things of this nature. So it's a very important part. The second phase, after the stabilization occurs, or concurrent with the stabilization, is a period of recovery in which you try to recover the elements of the country that allow it to prosper and grow, and that is attracting businesses back and creating the kind of stability that bring businesses back. We're seeing that allow it to prosper and grow, and that is attracting businesses back, creating the kind of stability that bring businesses back. We're seeing that allow it to prosper. Political parties are forming again. People are seeing that allow it to participate and grow, and that is attracting businesses. And finally, you want to see it in the kind of stability because in order to provisions that allow political parties are forming, it has to be stable, speaking, government, but you're also seeing that is civil. And finally, you want to see the kind of stability because in order to provisions that allow political parties are forming, it has to be stable, speaking, government, but you're also seeing that is civil. And finally, you want to see the kind of stability because in order to provisions that allow political parties are forming, it has to be stable, speaking, government, but you're also seeing that is civil. And finally, you want to see the kind of stability because in order
Last question, if you don't mind. Do you have any sense of clarity about when the war is going to be over in the Middle East.
The operation in Iran, as soon as we achieve our objectives, as I've outlined them repeatedly, and that is we've destroyed their Navy, we've destroyed their Air Force, we are well on our way to destroying the majority of their arms factories, and we're well on our way to significantly degrading their missile launchers. When those objectives are achieved, we will have achieved the purpose of this operation, and that's something that's not going to take months. That's a matter of weeks. I'm not going to tell you exactly how many weeks, but a matter of weeks, not months.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Americans, they don't have any clear image and plan of what to do.
The logic behind this is to eliminate the nuclear weapons program, to eliminate Iran's support for terrorism.
The Israelis do not want to have opening of political talks between Tehran and Trump.
Stay with Al Jazeera for the latest developments.
In-depth analysis of the day's headlines.
Diplomacy, yet again, was used as a ruse for war.
Critical debate.
Who betrayed the table? Who attacked the negotiations for the second time? For the third time during the talks we should be attacked? Who is talking about a greater country for itself? Israel, not Iran.
Iran has been a huge supporter.
I'm Tom McRae, you're watching Al Jazeera's extensive coverage of the war between the US, Israel and Iran. Coming up.
When we feel that they are, for a long period of time, put into the Stone Ages and they won't be able to come up with a nuclear weapon, then we'll leave.
Donald Trump says Iran does not have to make a deal for him to end the war and says the US will leave Iran in 2 to 3 weeks.
We do not have any faith that negotiations with the US will yield any results. The trust level is at zero.
Iran's foreign minister tells Al Jazeera he has no faith in talks with Washington, and although he's had messages from the US, no negotiations are underway. Israel carries out 2 attacks on Lebanon's capital, Beirut, killing at least 2 people.
The sooner we get to the negotiation table, the better it is for all the peoples of the region.
A united front calls for de-escalation across the Gulf, while Iran launches more attacks on the region. Donald Trump says US forces will end operations in Iran very soon and could be gone within 2 to 3 weeks. It's the latest timeline for withdrawal to be set by the US president. Speaking at the White House, Trump said Tehran does not have to make a deal for the US to end its war.
The US will be gone or done with the war in 2
I
to 3
think
weeks?
2 or 3 weeks.
Not 3 weeks, if it is
we'll
3
leave.
weeks.
No, they don't have to make a deal with me. When we feel that they are, and they won't be, for a long period of time, put into the Stone Ages, and they won't be able to come up with a nuclear weapon, then we'll leave. Whether we have a deal or not, it's irrelevant.
Earlier, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi told Al Jazeera there is zero trust between the two sides and that no negotiations are happening. Well, in a moment, we'll get the view from Tehran with Mohammed Val, but first we're going to go to Rosalind Jordan, who is in Washington, D.C. for us. And Ros, can you just run us through what else Donald Trump said? He also spoke about Iran's nuclear capability now.
Well, one of the things that the U.S. President Donald Trump did not talk about is what would happen to Iran's ability to try to produce nuclear energy, or as the U.S. has repeatedly accused Iran of trying to produce nuclear weapons. What would happen to the uranium that the Iranians already have in their possession? There's been no discussion, at least there wasn't any discussion on Monday here in Washington, about whether or how the U.S. might try to secure Iran's uranium stockpile. That is an important question because if you don't have access to material, you can't build a weapon. At least that's the working theory. There's also the question that the U.S. President Donald Trump raised was about this timeline. Originally, the administration had said that they thought this could all be wrapped up starting on February 28th, within 4 to 6 weeks. And so the president's comment now in the 5th week that this could be wrapped up in another 2 weeks or perhaps 3 weeks seems to comport with that overall timeline, but it does not really give any specificity about whether the U.S. would claw back the more than 50,000 U.S. troops, the 2 aircraft carriers, the destroyer groups, the other related military equipment from the region, and basically consider what the president has liked to call a little excursion, or frankly, a war, whether that would be enough to end this conflict.
Obviously, not the first time we've heard comments like this around timelines. What did he say about potentially doing a deal here?
Well, he contradicted himself during his comments. On the one hand, Donald Trump said that negotiations with the Iranians, ostensibly, we believe, through the Pakistani intermediaries, are going well. But then he also said that he did not need to have a deal, that it was the Iranians who were begging, his language, not mine, of the U.S. for some sort of political accommodation to end this war. But he also said that the talks continue. So it's not really clear what the president is prepared to accept in order to basically end U.S. military involvement in Iran.
OK, thanks so much for that, Ros. Ros Jordan for us there in Washington, D.C. We're going to go to Mohammed Val now, who is in Tehran for us. And I know these comments from Donald Trump have only come out in the last hour or so, but have we heard anything from the Iranians? And how do you think that the leaders there are likely to view these latest comments, given what we heard from Abbas Araghchi a little earlier?
Right. We haven't heard anything yet by way of reaction to these latest statements by the U.S. president. But when we look at the statements from the Iranian leaders over the last several weeks and the last few days, the likelihood that they will consider an American ending of the war without a deal a kind of triumph and victory for Iran, because they don't want any conditions to be imposed on them, and they don't see the prospects for some favorable conditions that will be good for Iran in those 15 points. So, I mean, the interpretation here will certainly be, okay, if they leave, then okay. If they come back, we are ready, and we are going to prepare for the next phase of this war. They will consider it an open-ended situation, and Iran will be preparing itself again for a resumption of these escalations, and especially that we have Israel, which is the elephant in the room here. They haven't said, Israelis haven't really made their intentions very clear, except when they talk about the need to continue the war. They need to discourage President Trump from striking a deal with Iran that is not favorable to the Israelis. And we have Lebanon. We have the Israelis' incursion or even invasion of South Lebanon. And that front is very much linked with the war here. The Iranians are saying they can't abandon their Lebanese allies, and they will not stop if the Israelis continue that invasion in South Lebanon. And that means even if the Americans withdraw from this situation, from this war, then the war with Israel will continue, which means that the war is going anyway to continue. So for the Iranians, they don't see, on the one hand, they will see this as a kind of victory for Iran because no conditions are being imposed on them through a deal. And on the other hand, they consider that this is not the end of the war. This means the war is on because they don't think that the Israelis are going to stop their actions in South Lebanon anytime soon.
And at the same time, Mohammed, the Israeli and American strikes continue on Iran.
That's right. We have several cities that have been hit today: Shiraz, Isfahan, Tehran, Karaj, Kermanshah. And also we have a list of civilian infrastructure facilities the Iranians say have been targeted over the last 24 hours, something that is very much a source of concern and also subject to reciprocated threats and reactions from Iran here. That includes a pharmaceutical company that produces medicine for cancer west of Tehran. That includes steel industries in Isfahan, a commercial seaport in Bandar Abbas, a steel factory in Burujan in western Iran, a meteorological facility in Bushehr, a residential complex in Mallard, west of Tehran. So these are vital civilian-related infrastructure facilities that have been hit over the last 24 hours, and the Iranians are threatening that they are going to retaliate in kind. And a specific threat has been mentioned here over the day against IT and IT companies and AI companies that are related to the United States, because the Iranians believe that those companies contribute very much in the operations of targeted assassinations here in Iran. So the Iranians are seeing only escalation in this, and they are seeing crossing of red lines towards civilians in Iran, something that they can't tolerate, and they say they will reciprocate, they will retaliate against.
OK, thank you for all of that, Mohammed. It's Mohammed Val for us in Tehran. Well, as we have been discussing, Iran's foreign minister has been speaking exclusively with Al Jazeera about negotiations. Let's take a listen to exactly what Abbas Araghchi said.
Nothing like this exists right now. Countries usually send messages to one another either directly or indirectly. This is not called negotiation, but this does exist right now. We have received messages from the US. Some are direct, some are through some of our regional friends. And wherever it is necessary, we reply to these messages. However, no negotiation has taken place, and the reports about that are not accurate. Discussions through messages are ongoing, and Mr. Witkoff has sent messages directly. Like I've said, this does not mean negotiation. These exchanges happen during both peace and war. We have not given any response to that 15-point proposal from the US. And from our side, there has been no proposal either. The reality is that we have never had a good experience from negotiations with the US. One time years ago we negotiated, and we even got a deal, and then the US withdrew without any explanation. And twice last year and now this year we negotiated with the US, and the result was an attack by them. And so we do not have any faith that negotiations with the US will yield any results. The trust level is at zero. And it's normal that when they propose negotiations, the first thing that is important for us to assess is how honest they are in the process. We don't see honesty. This trust does not exist. And for trust to be built, big steps need to be taken so that we can be in a situation where a negotiation can even take place.
Well, Israel is continuing to escalate attacks on Lebanon. A short while ago, Israeli attacks targeted Beirut, killing at least 7 people, according to the Lebanese Health Ministry. 21 others were injured in Israeli drone attacks. Well, for the very latest, we're going to Heidi Pett, who is live for us in Beirut, in the city there being hammered by these airstrikes. Can you just bring us up to date with the situation there as this death toll continues to rise?
Yeah, so in the last hour or so, there have been a number of strikes on Beirut, specifically in the south of the capital. And so in Halde, which is just south of the airport, it appears to have been a targeted assassination strike on a car that was travelling along the highway down there. Now, the latest updates we have from Lebanese officials is that 2 people who were travelling in that car were killed. And then just a few minutes after that, there were 3 loud explosions which echoed across the city. The understanding is that those were actually delivered by Israeli warships striking an area of Beirut called Janah. Now, the pictures that we're getting in, there's a lot of cars on fire. It's not clear if it was the cars or a building nearby that was the target of those strikes, but the toll from that has so far been quite devastating. We've just had an update from the Lebanese Ministry of Health. They're saying that the initial toll, so the expectation is that that could indeed rise, is that 5 people were killed and 21 others were injured in that particular strike.
OK, and meanwhile, Heidi, Israel says it is not responsible for killing 3 peacekeepers who were working in the south of the country. What more do we know about what happened there?
So over the course of a 24-hour period on Monday, 3 peacekeepers who were with UNIFIL, that's the UN peacekeeping force that's been stationed in southern Lebanon for decades, were killed in 2 separate incidents, actually. And so the Israeli military put out a statement a couple of hours ago saying that it wasn't responsible for an explosion that killed 2 of those peacekeepers in one particular part of southern Lebanon. I spoke to the representative for UNIFIL, in fact, shortly after that statement was issued, and asked if that accorded with any investigations that they had that were ongoing. And she told me that they hadn't completed their investigations yet, but they would welcome any information that might be forthcoming from any parties that have further information about that. So we're waiting the official results of any investigation that UNIFIL conducts into that incident, or indeed the separate incident on Monday that killed another peacekeeper. But this isn't the first time that UNIFIL peacekeepers have been targeted in this last 4 weeks of war here in Lebanon. In fact, we had injuries to 3 Ghanaian peacekeepers after Israeli tanks fired shells directly into their base back on the 9th of March. Now, in that incident, Israel accepted responsibility for that shelling, but they said it wasn't deliberate. They said that that was a mistake. And in separate incidents, we have seen UNIFIL's base in Naura targeted. Now, their investigation into that said that the projectile that fell into the base came from a non-state actor, that is Hezbollah. So we're seeing these peacekeepers coming under fire, whether deliberate or accidental, from both sides at the moment. But what is noteworthy in the Israeli statement that they issued a couple of hours ago, saying that they weren't responsible for the explosion that killed 2 of those peacekeepers on Monday, what they did say, though, is that they were asking the UN peacekeepers, this UN force that has been stationed in southern Lebanon for decades, to vacate areas that were subject to forced evacuation orders. So everywhere that they have ordered Lebanese civilians to leave, they are now also warning UN peacekeepers that they should leave those areas. And that is a very, very large swathe of southern Lebanon. They've reiterated these orders for everybody south of the Zahrani River to leave their homes. And they also, shortly before these bombings in the southern suburbs, reissued an order as well for the southern suburbs of Beirut. So that is more than 1 million Lebanese who have been forced from their homes in the last 4 weeks.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Heidi, for all of that. Heidi Pett for us in Beirut. Well, Israel's Defence Minister, Israel Katz, says homes in southern Lebanon will be demolished and hundreds of thousands of displaced Lebanese won't be allowed to return. Around 600,000 Lebanese have been forced from their homes south of the Litani River since Israel's war with Hezbollah began on March the 2nd. Now, the river lies around 30 kilometres from the border with Israel. Katz says the Israeli military will continue to occupy the area even after the war ends to ensure the security of people in northern Israel.
At the end of the operation, the IDF will establish a security zone inside Lebanon on a defence line against anti-tank missiles, and will maintain security control over the entire area up to the Litani, including the Litani bridges that will remain, while eliminating the Radwan forces that infiltrated the area and destroying all weapons found there. In addition, the return south of the Litani of over 600,000 residents of southern Lebanon who evacuated north will be strictly prohibited until the safety and security of the residents of the north is guaranteed. All houses in the villages near the border in Lebanon will be destroyed in accordance with the model of Rafah and Beit Hanun in Gaza, in order to remove once and for all the threats near the border from the residents of the north.
Well, meanwhile, Iran has been carrying out more attacks on Israel. In Tel Aviv, 9 people were injured by falling debris from missile interceptions. Large plumes of black smoke could be seen across the city. The Emir of Qatar has held talks with the President of the United Arab Emirates. Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani and Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed discussed the war on Iran and efforts to restore stability. The Emir's visit to the UAE comes with any future negotiations. It will extend the use of its Typhoon fighter jets in Qatar. It will also send more missile and air defence systems to Bahrain. It will extend the use of its Typhoon fighter jets in Qatar. It will also send more missile and air defence systems have shot down Kuwaiti drones as well as Typhoon fighter jets in Qatar. It will also send more missile and air defence systems have shot down. The country has seen weeks of strikes from Iranian-backed armed groups who say they are targeting US interests. Well, South Africa will cut its general fuel tax for the whole of April to help people bear the cost of rising petrol prices. That's after trade unions and business groups pressed the government for intervention to soften the impact of the Iran war. The Finance and Petroleum Ministries say the cut would cost the state around $350 million in revenue. Petrol prices are forecast to rise by about 15% and diesel close to 40%.
It doesn't give me much reassurance, how long is this relief going to be before they up it again, you know? So it gives some sort of, okay, cool, there's some certainty that, okay, it's not going to be as bad, but, you know, when are they going to up it again by another 2-3 more rand? Or even another 5 rand, you know? How long is this relief going to be? So more nervous than anything.
Let's hope, like they said, the increase will be little and that will help, but for now we are very worried.
While oil tankers in the Gulf remain possible targets for Iranian drones, only one has struck European soil in this war. It was an attack on British airbase in Cyprus. Now, one EU government is
Let's hope, like they said, the increase will be little and that will help, but for now we are very worried.
From the port of Piraeus in Athens, Greece. While oil tankers...
A Greek Coast Guard helicopter responds to an emergency in the Bay of Elefsina, 15 kilometers from Athens. Dispatchers say an attack drone has struck a tanker, setting it on fire, and 2 crew members are washed overboard. One of them is rescued by helicopter, the other by boat. It's an exercise, one the government here frames as routine.
This is a preventative drill because we live in uncertain times and
we
need to be sure we have operational capability.
It's true that fire and pollution containment drills do happen. This scenario involves firefighting tugs to put out the fire on board the tanker and a nearby refinery. Other tugboats bring specialized filters to suck up a supposed spill of 30,000 tons of petrochemicals into the sea, cleaning it on the spot. But this drill contains an element the Hellenic Coast Guard has never included before.
There have been previous exercises testing the Coast Guard's readiness to deal with oil spills. This is the first preparing for a drone attack in Greek territorial waters, and it comes in the wake of a drone attack on a British airbase in Cyprus on March 2nd.
There's an unfolding geopolitical situation that obliges us to test our operational readiness every day. It's not just about pollution. Greek merchant ships are everywhere, including war zones. We have to protect our merchant marines and prepare our country for any scenario.
Greece has the world's largest merchant navy, and many of its ships are operating in the tons of petrochemicals into the sea, job of the Hellenic Navy. On the spot. The Hellenic Coast Guard only operates in Greek waters, so this drill envisions a more radical scenario in which drones strike inside the Aegean Sea. It's not a scenario the government considers likely now, but it says it's preparing for every eventuality as this war becomes less and less predictable. John Psaropoulos, Al Jazeera, Piraeus, Greece.
Let's take a look at some of the day's other news now. In Gaza, there is a line people speak about but cannot always see. They call it the yellow line, a de facto buffer zone enforced by the Israeli military, cutting across parts of the Strip. And as Hani Mahmoud reports from Gaza City, it's reshaping how people live there.
It is not officially marked, and there are no clear signs on the ground. It is not officially marked, often know exactly where it is. And there are no clear signs on the ground. But people in Gaza often know exactly where it is, because getting too close can be extremely dangerous. Over time, this unmarked line has expanded, particularly along the eastern areas of the Strip, pushing Palestinians away from their land once they lived on, farmed, and worked. For many Palestinians, this is where the yellow line begins, an invisible boundary that is increasingly shrinking the space available for people to live. And in a place where most of the population has been already displaced, that loss of space is being felt every day. Across Gaza, nearly 2 million people have already been forced from their homes. Now, with large areas near the boundary effectively off limits, families are being pushed into smaller, more crowded spaces, often with little access to basic services. Too close
Suddenly, while you're asleep, you hear the sound of bullets hitting the window and the tent.
Expanded,
they pierce through the metal sheets, pass right next to you as you sleep. The exit from the other side. I'm afraid for my children when they go out to school. I have 2 daughters who are injured. I worry about them constantly, even when they just step outside the tent. You feel fear the moment they leave, that they might come back carried in bags.
And in a place where most of the population lives in a tent with her son and granddaughter, loss of space, she says the uncertainty of being too close to what Gaza nearly 2 million people.
Sound of bullets hitting the window and the tent.
Bombing and firing
they pierce through the metal sheets.
3 days ago,
pass
a young
right next
child
to you
was
as you
killed
sleep.
inside his tent.
The exit from the other
Where
side.
can we go?
I'm
We
afraid
would
for my
rather
children
die
when they go
on
out
our
to
own
school.
land, in our
I have
own
2
tent,
daughters who are
than
injured.
rent a place from
I worry
others.
about them constantly,
Where would we
even when they
get
just
the money
step
to
outside
rent?
the tent.
Before the war, we had
feel
jobs
fear
and
the
sources
moment
of
they
income,
leave,
and we
that
lived
they
in
might
our
come
homes
back
with
carried
dignity.
in bags.
His shop now falls within a territory with her son and granddaughters. Part of what many say is a growing area too close to what Israeli military control. As a high-risk zone. Along this line, daily life is signs of what appears to be a more permanent military presence. Still does not guarantee forces have set up positions and posts in several areas. In some of the areas that once supported small businesses are now out of incursions into nearby neighborhoods.
The
Local
danger is
observers
all
say
around
this
us.
expansion
The
is not only
aircraft are
restricting
constantly
movement,
bombing and
but also
firing
taking control of
randomly.
more land.
3 days ago,
preventing
a young
Palestinians
child
from
was
returning
killed
to homes,
inside his tent.
farmland,
Where
and
can we
property.
go? We would rather die
For
on
many
our own land,
Palestinians
in our
here,
own
Israel's
tents,
so-called
than
yellow
rent a
line
place
is not
from
just a
others.
temporary measure.
Where would we
It's
even get the money
increasingly
to
shrinking
rent?
the space where
Before the
people live,
war, we had
reshaping
jobs and
geography
sources of
and
income, and
affecting
we
lives,
lived in our homes
and
with
deepening
dignity.
the sense that this
His shop now
displacement may
falls
be
within a
permanent.
territory he can no longer access. As this unmarked boundary continues to expand, is a growing space available for civilian Israeli military control. Shrinking. Along this for those living here, there are also signs of what appears to be a more permanent military presence. But whether there will be a place to return to at all. Positions and posts in several areas. Some of them used from Gaza here say
taking a growing toll on fishing communities during what should be their busiest season of the year. Julia Galliano has more from Las Barrilas in Mexico.
Holy Week is usually peak season for fishing communities along Mexico's Gulf Coast. But this year, fishermen say in tar instead of valuable tuna, mackerel, or pompano. They are among roughly 3,000 people, alongside boats and aircraft deployed by the to contain a massive oil